I just got blindsided by my now ex-boyfriend and needed to vent somewhere people might understand. We'd been together for 2 years, living together for the past 8 months. Things seemed good. At least I thought so. About 6 months ago, he lost his job unexpectedly when his company went through layoffs. He had been working as a marketing coordinator at a tech startup that suddenly lost funding. He came home that day looking completely defeated. It was a Thursday, and we spent the entire weekend updating his resume and looking for new positions. I assured him it would be okay, that we'd figure it out together. I make decent money as a physical therapist, so I told him not to worry about the rent for a while. We could cover the bills with my salary until he found something new. He was grateful at first, promising to pick up more household chores and cook dinner every night to make up for it. That lasted about 3 weeks before he started spending most days playing video games and half-heartedly sending out job applications. A month into his unemployment, I came home to find him staring at his laptop with this desperate look on his face. He'd been checking his credit card statements. That's when he confessed he had about $14,000 in credit card debt spread across 3 cards. He'd been making minimum payments for years, but without income, he couldn't even do that anymore. The interest was compounding, and he was starting to get collection calls. I was shocked. In our 2 years together, he'd always seemed financially stable. We split expenses evenly, and he never mentioned money problems. When I asked why he hadn't told me sooner, he said he was embarrassed. Apparently, he'd racked up most of the debt in his early 20s buying expensive clothes and taking trips with friends he couldn't afford. He thought he'd pay it off eventually, but could never quite get ahead of the interest. I've always been careful with money. My parents struggled financially when I was growing up, so I learned to save early. I had about $20,000 in my emergency fund, slowly built up over the past 5 years. At first, I just listened and offered moral support as he worried about his debt. But as weeks passed and his job search dragged on, I could see how the stress was affecting him. He wasn't sleeping well, barely ate, and became increasingly withdrawn. After thinking about it for almost a month, I offered to pay off his debt. We sat down one Sunday morning over coffee, and I laid out a plan. I would transfer enough money to clear all his cards, and he could pay me back gradually, interest-free, once he found work. It was a big decision, but we were talking about moving in together permanently, maybe even getting engaged soon. I thought we were building a future together. He was hesitant at first. He said it was too much, that he couldn't accept it. But I could see the relief in his eyes even as he protested. We talked about it several more times over the next few weeks. I made it clear this wasn't a gift, but an interest-free loan with flexible repayment. Eventually, he agreed. The day I transferred the money, he was so grateful he cried. He promised he'd pay back every cent, that he'd never forget what I'd done for him. We spent that evening making plans for his fresh financial start, setting up a budget spreadsheet and talking about building his credit score back up. He deleted all the shopping apps from his phone and swore he'd be more responsible. For a while, things improved between us. He seemed lighter, more engaged in his job search. He started cooking again and picked up a small freelance gig that brought in a little money. We had movie nights at home to save cash and took walks instead of going out for expensive dinners. It felt like we were a team. 3 weeks ago, he paid off the last of his credit cards. We celebrated with takeout and a bottle of wine I'd been saving. He promised that as soon as he found steady work, his first priority would be building up savings to pay me back. I believed him. Then last week, after months of searching, he finally got a job offer. A marketing position at a stable company with better pay than his last job. I was thrilled for him. We celebrated again, this time with dinner at our favorite restaurant. I remember thinking how perfect everything felt that night, how we'd weathered this storm together and come out stronger. Yesterday, I came home from a long day at the clinic to find him sitting on our couch with this strange expression. He didn't get up to greet me like usual, just sat there, hands clasped between his knees, looking at the floor. I knew immediately something was wrong. "We need to talk," he said. Those 4 words made my stomach drop. He patted the couch next to him, but I remained standing. He launched into what sounded like a rehearsed speech about how much he appreciated everything I'd done for him, how I'd been his rock during the hardest period of his life. But now that he was starting this new chapter, he'd been doing a lot of reflecting on what he wanted. "I care about you deeply," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "But I think we're on different paths. I need to find myself again." At first, I thought he was joking. It was so cliché, so out of nowhere. We just celebrated his new job. We'd been talking about looking for a bigger apartment once he got his first paycheck. The night before, we'd fallen asleep making plans for a weekend trip to the beach next month. When I realized he was serious, my first thought was that there must be someone else. I asked him directly, and he swore there wasn't. He claimed he'd been feeling this way for months, but didn't want to hurt me while I was being so supportive. "So you waited until after I paid off your debt?" I asked. That's when he got defensive. He said he never asked me to pay his debt, that he'd been reluctant to accept it. He claimed my financial help made him feel emasculated and controlled. Said the whole situation made him realize we weren't compatible long-term. I reminded him of everything we'd been through, how we'd talked about marriage just a few months ago, how he'd said I was the best thing that ever happened to him just last week when he got the job offer. I meant it at the time, he said. But starting this job has made me realize I need a fresh start in every area of my life. The conversation went in circles for hours. I cried, I yelled, I begged for a real explanation, but his story never changed. He just kept repeating that he needed space, that he'd pay me back every cent, that he was sorry for hurting me. That night, he packed an overnight bag and went to stay with his friend. This morning, while I was at work, he came back and took most of his clothes and his gaming console. He left his key on the counter with a note saying he'd arranged to get the rest of his things later. The worst part? I found out he'd already signed a lease on a new apartment 2 weeks ago. He'd been planning this exit before he even got the job offer. While I was budgeting carefully to support us both, he was secretly preparing his escape. Going through our apartment now is surreal. His shoes are gone from the entryway. Half the closet is empty, but his winter coat still hangs there, like he couldn't decide whether to take it in May. I keep checking my phone for messages from him, for some explanation that makes more sense than what he gave me. But there's nothing. Our friends are as shocked as I am. His friend texted me to say he had no idea he was planning to break up with me. My friend Megan wants me to change the locks and throw all his remaining stuff into the hallway. My sister says I should take him to small claims court for the money. TBH, I'm less upset about the money than I am about wasting 2 years on someone who could discard me so easily. But that doesn't mean I'm okay with losing my savings. That money represented security to me. It was for emergencies, maybe eventually a down payment on a house. I'd been saving it since I got my first real job after college, putting aside a little from each paycheck. Part of me wants to believe he will keep his promise to pay me back. He sent a text this morning saying he'd start sending money as soon as he gets his first paycheck. But I'm having trouble believing anything he says now. How could I have been so wrong about someone? We lived together. We talked about kids' names. Last night I couldn't sleep, so I went through our text messages from the past few months. I was looking for signs that he was unhappy, some hint that this was coming. But all I found were daily check-ins, inside jokes, heart emojis, and plans for the future. Even his texts from the day before the breakup were normal, asking what I wanted for dinner and sending a funny meme about my favorite TV show. Some of our mutual friends think he might be having some kind of breakdown or a quarter-life crisis triggered by the job loss and debt situation. They say maybe he just needs time to figure things out. But even if that's true, how could I ever trust him again? IDK, how to move forward from here. I've never felt so betrayed. I keep alternating between crying so hard I can barely breathe and feeling so angry I want to text him paragraphs about what a terrible person he is. I haven't. The apartment lease is in my name, so at least I don't have to move. But I can barely afford it without his half of the rent. I'm going to have to find a roommate soon, which means letting a stranger into the space where my relationship just imploded. I called out sick from work today. I told my supervisor I had a stomach bug, but the truth is I can't stop crying long enough to treat patients. I've barely eaten anything in 2 days. My sister came over this morning with groceries, but I couldn't stomach more than a few bites of toast. What hurts the most is realizing that while I thought we were growing closer through this difficult time, supporting each other and planning our future, he was just waiting for the right moment to leave. Every "I love you" over the past few months feels tainted now. I know I'll be okay eventually. I have a good job, supportive friends and family, and I'm generally a resilient person. But right now, it's hard to imagine ever trusting anyone enough to be vulnerable again. How do you open yourself up after something like this? If he was having doubts, why not talk to me about them? Why accept thousands of dollars from someone you're planning to leave? Even if he does pay me back eventually, the emotional toll of this betrayal feels like a debt he can never repay. Has anyone else been through something similar? Does the feeling of being used ever go away? Wow, I didn't expect so many responses. Thank you all for the support and advice. To answer some common questions. Yes, we had a written agreement about the money. Nothing legally binding, just a payment plan. And no, I'm not planning to trash his stuff. I'm not that person. I just got a long email from him. He claims he only signed the lease because he wasn't sure where things were going with us and wanted as backup plan. He says he still cares about me, but needs to focus on himself right now. He included a screenshot of a recurring transfer he set up from his bank account to mine, $500 a month until the debt is paid. It's something, I guess. I haven't decided how to respond yet. Maybe I won't. Right now, I'm focusing on putting one foot in front of the other. I managed to eat a proper meal today and even took a short walk. Baby steps.